Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bad Anime Decisions, or should I say Bad Video Game Decisions. I'm your host Fuyu, and like I mentioned on the previous video, which was mostly a joke, I did actually get an invite to the Nintendo Switch 2 experience in NYC. Being the big Nintendo fan I am, I definitely had to go and make use of this once-in-a-lifetime experience. So how did it go? Keep watching to find out. On the day of the event, I made sure to wake up real early so I could catch an early ride to NYC. We had plenty of time to kill, so of course we had to go to the Nintendo store. There are a lot of neat things on display, but I kind of decided not to get anything. I kind of regret not getting that Mario Kart jacket though. We went to the event venue and lined up outside until it was time for our session, but eventually they let us in. After going through security, we went to a check-in area where they handed out a few items to us. First was a little wristband that we had to keep on for the entirety of the event, and then at the end they would cut it off. Next was a Nintendo lanyard with a Nintendo badge and a gameplay passport. Basically, the gameplay passport was just a little card that would allow us to play games later on, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit more later. After a brief wait in the check-in area, they eventually led us to the actual event area. So the event space was kind of divided up into multiple sections, and we had to wait for the previous session to finish first before we could start the real tour. In the first section, however, they did have some Switch 2 hardware on display that we could take a look at, and we could also touch and feel and pose with. When it was time for our session to officially begin, the staff explained to us that we would start off with Mario Kart. The stations were set up in pairs, so we had to get together with someone else if we weren't already with someone as a guest. So unfortunately, I didn't think things quite through, so I didn't have a tripod on me, and wasn't really able to capture much of my own gameplay footage. So I'll probably just throw some official Nintendo footage as a B-roll while I explain my experience. So the first thing they had us do was play a 2-player match in multiplayer mode on the TV. Something I noticed real quickly was that there was a lot of characters to select. So they're not necessarily unique characters though, there was a lot of reskins. So for example, I saw like 3 daisies at least. And then next thing I noticed was that during the cart and bike selection, we could only pick the actual vehicle and not really wheels or wings like in the previous game, which I don't know if it's streamlined for the demo and that's something that we can choose later on, or is that something that they're choosing to change for the final game? Honestly, keeping it simple might be better. Sometimes I kind of forget what combos I use. I don't know, maybe it's a good change, maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, it was a pretty fun experience. I hadn't played Mario Kart for a while. Well, technically, I played a couple rounds with Anya the night before just so I could figure out what I was doing. It definitely felt a little bit different than the previous games, but it's kind of hard to say without really having more hands-on time. So after the multiplayer match, they attended our station, told us to pick up the actual Switch 2 hardware and play in single-player mode. I guess they just didn't have them hooked up to be in multiplayer. And actually, this is the only time that we actually tried the Switch 2 in handheld mode. The rest of the session was on TV. But with the brief time I had with it, it felt pretty similar to a Switch. I can definitely say the screen was pretty nice. But yeah, only one round of handheld mode, so I can't really say too much about that either. After that, we did a couple more multiplayer rounds on the TV. So after our session was over, we were led upstairs to another area where more Mario Kart was set up, but this time we would be playing the Knockout Tour mode with a full set of 24 people. So the attendant from our previous session kind of advised us to try to make our selections really quickly so that we could have more time in the free roam area. So this is kind of like the lobby area for multiplayer while we were waiting for matches to begin. So the area that we had was a really large track that had kind of some grassy terrains and hills. It was a lot bigger than I'm used to, so it felt very weird, but it was kind of neat trying to check it out. But eventually the match started and we got booted out into the actual racetrack. So if you're not familiar with the Knockout Tour mode, basically it would be kind of one big race with 6 subsections. And at each checkpoint between sections, the bottom 4 players would be eliminated from the race completely, and then only the top players would continue on to the next section. When the match started, it was quite chaotic with all the carts and bikes running into each other, and especially when the first set of items came up, it was quite a lot of chaos actually. I remember basically throughout the whole match, I'd be jumping from like first place to last place constantly, and it was like super stressful, especially with how the knockout mechanic works. I'd be kind of like constantly looking at the corner of my screen, making sure I'd try to keep up. Like if you think Mario Kart is chaotic now, playing this mode is even more crazy. Like I feel like I was having a heart attack trying to make sure I didn't get knocked out. So somehow or another I managed to keep myself from being knocked out until segment 5. And you know what, I was actually in first place for a good chunk of that time, but as I got closer to the checkpoint, eventually just items came out of nowhere, knocked me out, and then I kind of like ended up in 6th place when I crossed and got eliminated at that point. So yeah, it was kind of a disappointment, but at the same time I'm pretty proud of that considering I have barely played in the last few years. So yay! After the knockout tour section, we were led to another area which had several stations set up. Basically, this was a free play area with multiple games on display, and this is where the gameplay passport comes into effect. The gameplay passport had 6 boxes which could be marked up at each station. So essentially you'd walk up to the kiosk, the attendant would mark it, and you get to play the game. I walked around the whole area first to scoop out which games were available, and kind of tried to plan out my selection of 6 games. For me, I wanted to prioritize newer games, and the games that had features that were unique. So the first thing I had to do was drag and drive, or drag X drive? I'm not really sure. So I think because of the nature of the game, with being basically a dual mouse game, it was basically mostly a tutorial, where you'd kind of cover the basic movements. The controls are actually pretty intuitive, and it kind of matches what you'd expect from like a real wheelchair. You'd kind of move forward by doing this kind of motion, and then turning would be like this, and vice versa. It makes a lot of sense, but when you're not used to kind of doing these control schemes for a video game, it feels weird, and it definitely feels like it'll take a lot of time to get used to. So I technically finished the tutorial, but whether I was good to go, I'm not really sure. After everyone finished the tutorial mode, they had us play a 3v3 match, and I'm not sure if I really did much. There was definitely one person who seems to carry our team, so technically I won, but all I did was run into people. After the demo was over and I kind of set everything down, I definitely had to like stretch out my arms and shoulders like this. It was quite a workout. So after that, the next thing I wanted to go to was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. They had a bunch of booths set up, but as you'd expect, all of them were full. Like everyone really wanted to play this game, so it kind of took a while before I got to play. But eventually I did. I've only played the original Metroid Prime on GameCube, and I don't really play FPSs too much in the first place, so I wasn't really used to the more conventional controls using the sticks for aiming. So it was kind of really awkward for me to kind of play, but somehow or another I kind of made it to the boss eventually. So actually I kind of had a little bit more difficulty on this beginner boss than I'd like to admit. And it was basically set up so that there was kind of certain weak points you had to aim for when its shields would drop basically. And yeah, I had a bad time aiming. I think it's just because the mouse as a movement option was so different, I didn't even realize to like change it into that. But I kind of got frustrated, and then I kind of remembered, oh, I can go into mouse mode, so I switched to that like mid-fight, and it made a huge difference for me, and I was able to kind of aim a lot more precisely. So when they revealed the mouse as an input option, I was a little bit skeptical because I thought it would be kind of awkward to hold, but it wasn't too bad, and it actually kind of ended up working. And then I was able to kind of take in the boss fight a little bit more, since I didn't have to focus on aiming as too much. And then one of the kind of fun aspects were the energy waves that would come do sometimes. Sometimes when it's high, you could go into Morph Ball to dodge it, then like exit out real quick to continue attacking. So that was fun. And eventually I was able to defeat the boss in a not very elegant way, but yeah, I managed. So after playing that, the attendant kind of suggested going to play Civ to kind of play around with the mouse mode more, so I kind of took her advice, and that was my next stop. So for Civilization 7, I haven't actually played that specific version, but I have played most of the older ones. So I had a fairly good idea of what I was doing. Maybe not really. So I picked a random civ and set it to quick mode, kind of to maximize the limited time I'd have. So I think each demo was basically either you get to the endpoint or you'd hit your 15-minute limit, and then obviously Civ doesn't take 15 minutes to complete a game. So the attendant there kind of explained the controls, which were a little bit unique. So with the left stick you can pan around the area, and then in mouse mode you'd have the right Joy-Con set up with the R and ZR buttons as your left and right mouse clicks respectively, and then you'd use the right stick to zoom. And actually, a kind of neat thing that the attendant showed me is that you could actually swap the orientations of the Joy-Cons. So you could have the left stick on mouse mode and the right stick in kind of conventional controller mode. And then you could basically be playing with left-handed mouse mode, which was pretty cool. So I guess if you're a left-handed mouse person, it kind of feels nice that they would kind of consider that as an option, honestly. So after that brief explanation, I started the game for real. One thing I did notice was that the mouse was actually a lot more precise than I was imagining, and it didn't really feel too much different from a conventional mouse. And one of the things that the attendant pointed out was on the Joy-Con strap, the bottom had the same kind of plastic that you'd see on the mouse, so it kind of glides the same way. And all the stations had desk pads kind of set up, so everything kind of moves smoothly. I do kind of wonder what it would be like for a kind of living room setup where you don't necessarily have that, but maybe we're going to start seeing everyone's kind of living room furniture with desk pad setup or something, at least for playing, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 titles. As far as Civilization 7 is concerned, though, it was kind of a little bit difficult to absorb the different gameplay changes from 7 in the previous games. Just because there's a lot of text, and I kind of skimmed through the text a bunch so I could kind of get back to the gameplay and kind of maximize that. So I just kind of winged it and used my Civ instinct, I guess. Not really much to say other than the mouse controls were pretty intuitive after you get used to it. It was easier to navigate the UI than you'd imagine, like kind of navigating with just the conventional controller mode. And I was able to make a lot of progress before it eventually timed out on me. After Civ 7, I decided to walk around the area to try to figure out my next game, and then eventually I got flagged down by an attendant at the Super Mario Party Jamboree TV station. So basically they needed a fourth player to be able to kind of start the demo, and me being the awkward person I am, I kind of couldn't refuse. So I ended up joining. So for this iteration of Mario Party, it used the camera accessory as well as the onboard mic for gameplay. So to play, we kind of had to stand in specific positions for the camera to kind of register us. So I was on the very edge, and it was kind of awkward for me to get in the right spot because I was kind of up against this divider. And keep that in mind for the next part. So basically the games were played 2 versus 2, with one person kind of being like Mario and the other person kind of being Luigi, I guess. The first minigame that we did was this thing where we'd basically listen to commands, and we'd kind of stand or squat based on the commands, and it would also kind of be based on which character we're playing, so you had to pay attention to that too. So fortunately, me and my teammate were able to win the first match, so yay! However, the next one didn't go so well for our team. So for this one, it was basically kind of like an AR mode, where there would be a kind of like virtual coin block above our heads where we kind of had to like do this punching motion like this, I guess. But I don't know if it's just because like I'm short or something, or maybe it was my positioning. I was really bad at hitting the block and like coins wouldn't come out, so yep, lost it for our team. And then the last mini game was basically a mode where the teams would kind of take turns making a lot of movement and noise, and you'd get a rating based on how much, I guess, energy you gave off, or however you wanna think about it. And yep, we lost that one too. I don't know if it's, maybe I'm just too quiet, I don't know. Maybe it's the camera not picking up my movements. But anyway, we lost, so being the losers, eventually Bowser just kind of like Spatfire us and we died. And that's how my Nintendo Switch 2 experience ended. So after that was over, I kind of walked around and finally settled on Kirby as my 5th game. It's basically an enhanced edition of the previous Switch title, which honestly I haven't played, and it's kind of been a while since I played any like normal Kirby games. The last one was probably on the 3DS, the All-Star Collection, I think. It's pretty normal for a Kirby game. Same kind of movement you get from like say Kirby 64 or something like that. Honestly, there's not really too much to say. It's kind of, you know, pretty conventional. It was fun playing with the powers, and there's that kind of new like mechanic where you kind of suck up objects and you kind of inherit the powers. So like most of the demo was on this kind of spring thing. So that was kind of fun, where you kind of like bounce around and then do a stomp thingy. So maybe I'll get it. But it's probably not that big of a priority, to be honest. So after that, I had very little time left before my 1.5 hours would end. So I kind of walked around some more, and then I saw Hades 2 open, so you know what, I just went for it. I haven't actually played Hades 1, but I'm vaguely familiar with like roguelike mechanics, so I had a vague idea of how to play it, sort of. So obviously for Hades, the kind of art style was definitely one of its big selling points, and there was a lot of like story stuff that was kind of going on with like characters and stuff, but honestly I skipped through most of it so I could focus on the gameplay with the limited time we had. So I did notice that it kind of seemed to have like a very extensive upgrade system. So obviously there's the drops that you get that don't carry over between runs, but there also seemed to be an upgrade system using tarot cards, or I think that's what they were, that did carry in between, and that was kind of accessed through the hub world, but yeah, it'd be kind of hard to explore that fully since I was on a time crunch. So I kind of basically went to the combat areas as soon as possible, and the combat definitely feels pretty smooth. I kind of wished I could have remapped the buttons though to make dashing better, since usually I kind of like dashing and attacking at the same time, but with the face buttons I kind of have to move my thumb a little bit to do those actions. But anyway, it felt pretty nice, but unfortunately I didn't make it into any big bosses before my time ran out. So after I collected my 6th mark, I headed to the next section, which was dedicated to Donkey Kong Bonanza. So similarly to the initial Mario Kart section, everyone would get to play Donkey Kong Bonanza. It definitely feels like they kind of set up the event to highlight those two. So obviously Mario Kart was something that basically everyone wanted to play, so it's nice that they kind of had it as a freebie for everyone to play. And it kind of feels like Donkey Kong's the same way, where either they expect everyone to really want to play it, or they really want to have everyone experience it and get interested in it. So honestly, for me, a lot of people had DK as part of their like bingo or predictions or wishes, whatever you want to call it, for the Switch 2, but I wasn't actually too interested myself, honestly. And from the reveal trailers, I wasn't quite sold on it. Just kind of watching DK go banana. But when I actually stepped up to the station, that was kind of a different matter. So for this demo, the way it worked was a little bit different. So instead of having kind of like a definitive endpoint where the demo would end, it would kind of last the whole 20 minutes until like it just timed out, and then it would be over. So it was kind of divided up into 2 sections. One was kind of like the intro level that kind of sets up the story or whatever, and then kind of a later level that's presumably lower down. So one of the neat parts about the controls is that it's very intuitive. So you'd use the A button for jumping, and then you'd use the X, Y, B for punching, and it's kind of arranged intuitively. So X would be an upward punch, Y would be a forward punch, and B would be a downward punch. So it kind of corresponds to the direction that the face buttons are. So it was really easy to pick up and learn, even though the gameplay is pretty simple. And then when I started playing it, I think that's when I realized what the appeal was. I mean, the easiest way I can explain it is it really appeals to your monkey brain. Like it makes you feel like you an ape. So like just kind of punching everything and just like smashing everything. It's weirdly like visceral and kind of like oddly satisfying. Like breaking everything collecting all the shiny things, breaking more, collecting more. You just like, you return to ape now. So like I said, the demo lasted for 20 minutes, but it kind of felt shorter than that, and I think it's because I kind of got absorbed in it. At some point I did like defeat a boss kind of thing, but it kind of looped around and then you can kind of continue exploring the area. So that was pretty fun, just kind of finding things to destroy, like throwing rocks at things. It's just very primal, I guess. Yeah, actually, you know what? I can definitely see why they wanted to show this off as kind of the end piece. It definitely makes me want to buy it more than I was initially expecting. But unfortunately, that was the end of the games for the event, so all that was left was kind of go to the exit. So at the end, there were some people that were ready to kind of cut off your wristband, and unfortunately, they wouldn't let me keep it after cutting it, even though I asked. So I took a commemorative photo, so in exchange they gave me a Nintendo Switch 2 bag and a little sticker. I could have sworn there was something about like collecting the gameplay passports later on, but I guess not because everyone had theirs at the end. So after collecting my swag, I took the exit and headed back downstairs. So basically the way the event area was set up was that the stairs to exit would kind of lead you past the check-in area again. So as I was going down, the check-in people were like yelling and like cheering, and so it was kind of weird experience. Kind of felt like I'm sort of celeb or something for like completing all these games, like the elite gamer I am, I guess. So after finishing the event, I was still waiting for my my party member to show up. So I kind of ended up like spending some time talking to a different attendee in the lobby area, along with a security guard, strangely enough. So we were kind of talking about like the experience and stuff. So it was kind of mainly on Mario Kart, like, you know, the changes and stuff. There was a lot of things like he noticed that I didn't notice, like with regard to how like the item usages were and stuff like that. So that was fun to talk about. So at some point we kind of started talking about like that new From Software game that was coming out. It's kind of sad that they didn't show it off, but it's probably way too early in development. And then for me personally, I kind of wish they had Pokemon Legends ZA, but I feel like they're probably saving that for like more Pokemon PR related events or whatever. So I mean, that's how it is. So all the while we were talking in the lobby waiting for our people to show up, there was a bunch of people like outside that were trying to come in, but security would kind of like be like, nope, get out. So it was kind of a weird experience. Like, it kind of felt like I was some sort of VIP, and like we want to keep these commoners out, like, ooh, shoo, off. So I don't know. It definitely makes you feel like winning this event was you know, a big deal. So one of the dreams I've had since I was like younger was to actually attend like E3 and kind of have that like experience, but E3 is dead, so that's not happening. I think this is probably the closest I'll ever get, so I'll take it. But eventually we grouped back up, and then the event finally finished and we had to head home, which was an ordeal, but we're not gonna get into that. But yeah, I got back home at like 2 a.m. It was terrible, way more expensive than expected, but yeah, whatever. So after experiencing the Switch 2 in person myself, what are my final thoughts? I mean, I'm definitely biased, like, so I'm a big Nintendo fan, so obviously I'm gonna get it at some point. The emphasis being at some point. Like, at $450, like, it was a little bit iffy, but I can probably make it work. I mean, you guys know how much we spend on the channel if you watch any of our previous videos. With that said, personally I have a lot of bills I need to pay all of a sudden, and the economy is tanking, so I'm not sure if I can kind of afford to spend unnecessarily on that kind of stuff anymore. And yeah, that's at the $450 price point, but recently kind of Nintendo pulled back on that and was like, we'll get back to you on the pricing situation later. Yeah, these tariffs are really messing everything up. I'm sure Nintendo was not intending for any of this to happen, but I think they were probably just committed at this point and couldn't really stop it. I'm assuming they're pumping these out at the factory right away, so yeah. So the real question is, what will be the final price point at launch. Honestly, I wouldn't really be surprised by like a $700 price point just for the console itself. Like, if you're on the fence already, there's no way you're gonna pay $700 for that. I guess there's always the possibility that Nintendo honors the original launch price that they announced, at least for the initial batch, which I'd be kind of tempted to get, even if it kind of makes finances kind of tough, because that might be the cheapest it's ever going to be with how everything's going. I don't know. I guess there's also the possibility the whole economic situation changes, but it's hard to predict. It keeps changing all the time, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to say for like pricing and all that, so, you know, leaving all that aside, I can definitely say the games were definitely fun. Like, out of the ones that I played, you know, Mario Kart was definitely fun and kind of played differently than the other games, especially with how more open things are. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it quite yet. I need more time on it. And like I said, you know, Donkey Kong, Monkey, so primal, that was fun. Drag X Drive was pretty unique. I'm not sure how often I would play it, but I definitely appreciate like the out of the box gameplay. But yeah, that's basically the summary of my experience at the event. Hopefully you guys will get to try it out and kind of make your own opinions about it in the near future. So what do you guys think? Will they re-reveal the price to be like higher, lower? Let me know down below, and if you're interested, please like and subscribe if you want some more bad anime decisions. So yeah, we're most likely gonna just go back to normal bad anime decisions, not bad video game decisions for the next one. So that's probably a wrap. See you baddies later. Bye!